So happy to be here.
You know, for those of you who don't know, Lynn was with us in Chicago in March, and she joined us when we first showed the film in March 8th. And she was sharing with me before we came on that it was the last film festival that she was really able to attend in person. And we were talking about how COVID has presented challenges and opportunities for people who are watching films, so who are, avid film goers. And so, Lynn, we're really happy to have you join us this time and
In this form. I'm happy to
in
be
this
here.
form.
Yeah,
And I hope that you've been well throughout this whole period of COVID.
so far so good. Yeah, thank you. You too, Eileen. I hope everybody there has been okay.
Thank God my family and my colleagues have been well, and we just soldier on, right? Because we don't have a choice.
You don't- yeah.
But we were thrilled to be able to show the film again this fall. Um, it's a very interesting film, Lynn. I'm not surprised because you have a very interesting film history, and we'll get into that. But can you talk a little bit about the movie? So I remember that you told me that you made this movie in a very short period of time. Can you talk about the film and making the movie?
Well, we filmed the movie in Hungary, in Budapest, because it takes place in Germany. It supposedly takes place in Germany. It's fictional, so but we say Germany. And I went to scout in Germany, and of course, Germany has been so built over since the war that it looked like a modern city. I couldn't find one block to shoot on, to film on. I just want to, make sure that my language is understood. And then we visited Budapest. Budapest. They tell me you have to say Budapest. You don't say Budapest. And it was amazing. It was perfect. I mean, there were bullet holes that were still in buildings from the communist era, and blocks and blocks of streets that had been untouched since World War II. So we just got permission to film on certain streets, and it was excellent because we were a very low budget film, and we had to move quickly. And it was the dead of winter, and we were working with animals. So
tell us about working with those animals. How many dogs did you actually use in the film?
There were five German Shepherds, with one or two being our, the ones we used the most. But we had to have dogs. We couldn't find one dog that could do everything, that could attack, that could swim, that could allow itself to be hugged, to lick someone's face. So we would find whatever we needed to film, and we would say, okay, which dog is best for that? Stella, Eber, Greta, whoever it was that was the best dog we would bring in. But the one that we used the most, I don't know if you remember from the movie, had a marking right here.
Like a black marking kind of,
Yes,
right?
exactly. And he had, that was Eber, and he had eyes that just drove me wild. So the close-ups were mostly him. And then when we did the other dogs, we would put them in makeup, but we would just, make a marking here on the dog so it all matched.
So how did you find such well-trained dogs? Like, you didn't bring them over from the States. Obviously you used dogs from in Europe, so.
Yeah, I mean, you can't bring animals. If you do, you have to they have to be quarantined. That word that I never thought we'd use for us, but they would have to be quarantined for a month or two or something before they're allowed. No, Hungary, these dog trainers were among the best in the world. They were a husband and wife team. They were so fantastic. And many movies that shoot in Europe use these trainers. They bring them in from Hungary because they're so good. They live in a home with like a farm with all kinds of animals, and they rescued dogs all the time. And these dogs, I just loved them. They were fantastic. I mean, it's not easy working with a dog. They have moods just like people do. There were times that we'd roll the camera and the dog would take a look and say, I'm out of here, and turn around, run in the opposite direction. So
How much film do you have to shoot? I mean, look, the film is based on a book, but in the book, the dog kind of talks, like the dog is the narrator. In your film, the dog is the star. I felt like the dog was absolutely the star, but it's all done by the expression. It's all on the expression of the dog's faces. And so as I was watching it and I was thinking about my own dogs, I was thinking, how much film do you have to shoot to be able to get that, to capture that emotion so that you feel like the dog is talking, but he isn't?
well, two things. First of all, when I read the book, I made a decision almost immediately that I would not use a talking dog, or to hear the narration of the dog.
Mhm.
I didn't want that because there's so many dog movies that are done that way. And with the seriousness of this subject matter, I wanted us to invest in trying to read the feelings of the dog and not being told. And the second part of your question is, we had to be very quick and facile, because the cameraman, the director of photography, was magnificent. He was also a very small man, so he could crawl in and out of spaces, and he was very limber. And that's what we had to be ready for, because if the dog did something interesting, it would be like, get it on film right this second, get it. Because you can't say to a dog, can you please do that again,
Right.
So we had to be spontaneous. We had to be spontaneous. And sometimes we'd have to do it over and over again. And other times we would just get something as a surprise instantaneously.
So how many hours of film did you have before you were able to edit it down to the finished film?
I don't remember, but the number 17 comes to me, 17 hours.
Wow.
Because we did a lot of second unit, which is where you send another unit out to film, and they were just hired to film the dogs in the street. The scenes where the dogs were in a gang, in a pack.
Yes.
That we had the cameras running all the time just to see what we could get.
And how do you as a filmmaker, I mean, this is clearly a labor of love for you. I can tell when I talk to you, and you can tell from watching the film. So how do you make the decisions to cut and not, what goes, what stays? How difficult is that?
You can sort of read, just like you can with actors, how much they have left in them. I could see when the dog was depleted and it was like, enough already. So again, it was instinctive. It was, and sometimes we never knew what we were going to get. When we blocked a scene, when we prepared a scene on the set, the trainers would watch it, and then all the humans would have to clear the set, just the trainer and the dog. We were not allowed to make any eye contact with the dog, none, to distract it. And the trainer would go over and over and over what we were shooting, what we were filming. And then he would say to me, okay, ready. Okay, ready. So it was an interesting process.
Well, and then you were working with a child. So,
yes.
So you have Joshua on one hand, you're working everything that, that we read about is very difficult to work with, dogs and children, but they both did such a spectacular job. So how did you cast Joshua?
I heard about Joshua through a friend of a friend. And he came, I wanted to read him at my house, at my home where I am now, because I have dogs. And at that time I had two, now I only have one, but I wanted to see him around dogs. And he didn't have a dog at that time either. And he came to my house and I could see he was a little afraid of the dogs. He was a little afraid of them. But as he stayed longer and longer, he became more comfortable. And that was a very important element. Aside from his wonderful acting abilities, he had to be comfortable around dogs, had to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that relationship, the love between the boy and his dog and the dog for the boy. And so, it wouldn't have worked if he had discomfort around animals, but especially dogs. So
Any discomfort would have showed up on screen.
absolutely, absolutely. So you've had an interesting career. So and doing some research on you, I learned you were a rabbi's daughter.
I am, yes, yes.
And so you know, tell me, how did you like how did you go into film? Like, um, growing up, what were the influences that made you choose that? Because I know that you majored in like literature. And
Yes.
so clearly the arts were always like of interest to you, but how did you get from here to there?
Okay, well, I actually feel that, and anyone who is the child of a rabbi or even a cantor knows that shul biz, as we call it, is very close to showbiz, because
Right.
they are putting on a show. They are putting on, they are on a stage, they're on a bima, and it's a show. So I would watch my father prepare. I would see his nervousness. I would see his great flair on the stage. And that really prepared me for show business. And the other thing is that he said uh, that I would do this as a child. I would organize the block and put on a show. I would say, okay, Eileen, you make the costumes and you build the scenery and go in the house and get your parents clothes and props and we'll bring them all out. He said I was doing that when I was 12 years old. So basically I started then. I had the desire and the need to organize the block and put on a show.
Oh my gosh. So how did you like get into like screenwriting and producing and directing? Like what, like how did you go from a literature major to film?
Well, for about 20 minutes, I wanted to be an actress. And I'm glad I studied it because everything, writing, acting, all of this stuff really helps in directing because directing encompasses all of it. And I'm glad I had all these experiences. So I wanted to be an actress and I was up for the role, I can't even believe this, but I was up for the role of Seidel in Fiddler on the Roof, you know?
Ah,
And I had many auditions with Norman Jewison, who was the
mhm.
director. And when I kept getting callbacks, I thought, oh, maybe this is a possibility. And then I did not get the role because I was too tall, I was too this, I was too that, whatever it was. And I said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. So I found a more torturous career, which was being a writer. And no, but I do love being a writer. I mean, that's how I started. And it all starts on the page with the script. It all does.
So you've done a number of screenplays. I know you've written for television, you've written for theater, right? You've
Yes,
for
yes.
theater. Um, and what is your favorite part of it? Do you like being behind the camera? Do you like what's your favorite piece, you know?
I think two things come to mind when you ask that question. First is the spontaneity that I talked about. When you're on a set and there's a whole bunch of people around and you can think of something that maybe wasn't even in the script and you didn't even talk about, you just see it and then you film it. It's so exciting. It's so exciting to see something in the moment that you can capture. That's something I absolutely love. And the second thing is when you put the music in, that is, I don't think there's been one time in any of the things that I've done that when the music comes in, I don't start to cry, even in the comedies, you know, because what the music adds is so, it's subconscious, it's a subconscious reaction, but it's also, then it becomes a real movie. It's a real movie when the music comes.
I agree with you. Sometimes I watch a movie for the first time and I can't tell you if there was music or not. Okay. So I'll watch it again to listen to the music. Like I could have had a very cerebral experience of the film, but I can't tell you about the music the first time around. So I really have to like watch it again to hear the music and to think about what the music does to the film. And I love that. Like when it just all comes together, I,
But I
I think
believe
that's
when you're watching the movie and you're not aware of the music, that's probably the best kind of scoring there is. Because when
right.
music interrupts and takes over and says, listen to me instead of watching the movie, then it's not doing its job. But when it's doing its job, it keeps you completely engrossed the way you just described, without calling attention to itself. I think
So,
that's kind of scoring.
so for this movie, how did you choose the music? How do you make those choices?
It was difficult. It was difficult because a lot of composers wanted to do this movie. It's the one thing they love the idea of um, speaking through the dog with music. They just
Mhm.
it was something different for them. It was a challenge. So this is a very young composer, a Russian composer that we hired, and he saw the movie and heard a melody and came to my house, sat down at my piano and played it. And that was it. He was right. That was the theme. And I love that he had a lot of classical training, that he also spent a lot of time in Europe. I like that he had that kind of a background because of when the movie took place. So I felt that he was the right person for the movie. I hope so. I hope I was right.
I think you were.
Yeah.
I think you were because you created a really wonderful film. And what I really like about it is that it's a film that you could show to, I wouldn't show maybe to a 5-year-old, but I would show it like to a middle schooler. I think it speaks to them. Because, August is about that age, middle school age, but so many Holocaust films don't get seen by the middle school kids because either they're not appropriate, the subtitles, kids are not so interested in reading subtitles. But this is a way of bringing this subject and um, introducing it, I think, um, that's inspirational for a young person to watch and
That
to
was the,
learn.
that was the real intention of the film. The intention of the film was to be able to introduce the Shoah to young people, Jewish and non-Jewish, and Christian and Muslim and Hindi and whatever, um,
Right.
to this particular time in history, in a way that they could learn about it, but it would still be palatable. It wouldn't send them into a complete, uh, nightmare and trauma.
Right. But like even even the topic of giving up your dog. So, it so happens that today my son just adopted a dog, a German Shepherd,
Good.
actually, a 7-month-old German Shepherd. And I see the joy that, he was FaceTiming with me to show me the dog. And And I was and I'm thinking about this movie, and I'm talking to him, and you can't help but think that for most children who have dogs and they love their dogs, and when we think about the Hulk, we don't think about that that Nuremberg laws, which were changing on a daily basis, that like down to you couldn't own a dog. You couldn't own a dog. And the woman who said, I don't want a dog, and especially not a Jewish dog, like it would really make a difference. I don't know. I really think it's a wonderful film, and I think it's a great film to be able to share with middle schoolers. And what I would love to do is to be able to show this in a movie theater to middle schoolers, because I think it shows beautifully on the big screen. And, I think you kind of lose yourself when you're sitting in a dark movie theater. And I just think, it would be spectacular. So it's in the back of my head for when COVID is no longer with us.
I hope so. I hope.
We hope so.
As I mentioned to you, we've been booked in the theaters. The first place we were going to open was Chicago, first at the Renaissance, and then at the
Yes. The Century or the Music Box?
No, the Leicester, the Leicester, oh my gosh, I can't remember.
Doesn't ring a bell with me. I mean, there's the Century Landmark, the Landmark.
Maybe it was. Well, the Renaissance isn't the Renaissance a landmark?
Yes, but there are two of them. So the Renaissance is in Highland Park, and the Landmark is in the city.
Well, definitely the Renaissance we were booked in.
Yeah.
I want to say the Leicester, something like that. Anyway, we're booked in April, and then they pushed us to May, and then to June, July, August, October, November, and now we're talking January, but who knows? It doesn't seem likely that theaters will open. Such a shame.
No, it is a shame, because there's nothing like being in the movie theater. There's just nothing like it.
Nothing. And I'm so glad you saw it on the big screen originally, because there is something, I don't know how it translates to someone's television or computer or whatever, but in a theater when everyone's watching it together, there were collective gasps. It was like, and then cheers when the dog, got out of the water. And so to just be in an atmosphere where people can express themselves like that, watching the movie, it's more of an emotional experience.
Absolutely. So tell me, what are you working on next? Like, what's next?
I don't really, I haven't committed to anything yet. And sometimes it's like with dogs, they find you, you may go to a pound or you may go to someplace, but they look at you and you say, okay, I have to have that dog. So it's the same thing with projects. I'm sort of waiting for a project to find me, because they take, especially these independent films, they take so much energy, and so they're hard to get made. It's not a studio film where they just say, okay, here we go.
Right.
So I'm waiting for something to grab me around the neck and say, that's it, you can't let go, you have to make me. But I have been sort of gravitating to Jewish themed films now. I have been for the past 10 years. So this is something that I'm interested in. I made The Little Traitor about eight or 9 years ago, which was about the British Mandate in Israel, based on an Amos Oz book. I think that played the Chicago Festival too.
I think it might have played, yes, it might have played the Festival of Israeli Cinema.
Maybe, but we
definitely years ago. But that's available for anybody who's interested in watching that, because it was a great movie. It was a great book made into a great, screenplay, and that is available on YouTube.
That's available on YouTube and Amazon and Hulu and the library one. What's the name of the library thing? Canopy.
Yeah, Canopy.
Yeah. So yeah. So I'm assuming that the next thing I work on will most likely be Jewish themed.
And where does your inspiration come from?
where does my inspiration come from?
Uh-huh.
Um, Again, it usually comes from just it finding me or me finding it. With this movie, I was teaching a film class in Israel during the summers through Tel Aviv University, with what the producer that we have, Howard Rosenman, we were teaching it together. And we were teaching pitching, how to pitch an idea, because pitching is very important. You come to a network or a studio and you say, I want to make a movie about blah, 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 blah. And you know, everyone has such attention deficit that you have to get it out. You have to make them understand.
Yes.
So we were teaching them the art of pitching. And one of the students got up and pitched this idea that a friend of his was writing a book. It hadn't yet been written, but this was the theme. It was the trajectory of a dog during the Shoah. I just heard that much of the sentence, and I remember going like this, oh my God, I have to make this movie. I cannot walk away from this. So I actually, you know, I was still working on Little Trader and promoting it all over, but then started writing the script for this, and I just couldn't let it go. I couldn't let it go. I would have been miserable if I
So
let
how
it.
long does it take you from the, like, how long would you say it takes to make a movie, an independent movie?
Well, you know, I don't think there's any set time, but it takes a long time. You'll see on the Academy Awards that people will accept their award and they'll say, this was 20 years in the making.
Yeah.
You know? And it's true. People have these movies and it doesn't get made. They put it away. They bring it out. This one, I think from that pitch, and we're not going to count that. We'll count from the time the script was written to the time it was made, was about 4.5 years. And that's pretty short in movie life. You know, like you have dog years. In movie
Yes.
years, this is pretty short. So yeah, 4.5 years.
And you're, so you've also worked in television. Is there a shorter time from like inception to bringing it to the smaller screen?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Once you get the commitment, it's like, shoot it. We got to have, you know, we have an air date of, you know, 2.5 months, 3 months from now, you got to do it. So, yeah, and television, I was involved with series and, you know, the manufacture of episodes. Oh, but the schedule is very fast. And it helped me in making low budget features because I learned how to move fast. I learned how to do that. And that television background was important in making independent films, because the bigger films, they have the luxury of shooting, you know, months and months and months, and we'll do this take because they have all this money and all this, you know, the huge crews. We didn't have that. We had to do like, we had 18 days or 20 days and we just had to get it done.
And what do you think, you know, how do you think COVID and this period of time is going to affect movie making? And, you know, we don't know what it's going to mean in terms of the movie theaters for sure. We know there'll be some fallout from it, but movies just aren't being made.
Yeah, although we are now here in Los Angeles, in Atlanta, in Europe, they are starting to be made again because I know friends are now working. I don't know if it's a good idea because they have all kinds of strict requirements. You know, everybody has to take their temperature every 5 minutes and separated and this. But the art of movie making is very, it's a committee.
Yes, it's a
yeah,
team. It's
a team.
right. I mean,
Yeah. So I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know how they're going to do love scenes. I don't know how they're going to do fights, and I don't know how they're going to do it. But movies have to get made, I guess. In terms of the creativity, it's interesting. You would think that now that we're all stuck at home, that there were going to be just millions of screenplays written and ideas. But from what I heard from my creative friends and my writer, producer, director friends, they haven't been as creative during this time as they thought they were going to be.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting.
I think the challenge of living through a period where we can't imagine the end. We can't see an end yet, in sight. Um, and I think the whole the whole interruption of everything that's going on politically and just through society. I, I don't know. I think that challenges. I think it's really affecting us in ways that we're not going to even be able to understand for years. I think that sociologists will study it because um, it's so unprecedented a time.
Absolutely, well said. And and my instinct says that it's not conducive to creativity. We've been too rattled. Maybe now, but I don't know. Here, every 5 minutes there were fires and earthquakes, and all the plagues were coming to life. And it was just hard. It's hard during that time to sit down and be creative when you're glued to the television to see what's happening in life. Maybe it will have a delayed reaction. Maybe once we calm down collectively, some it will be expressed in many different ways. I'm not sure. As you say, it's unprecedented, so it's hard to see, and we will find. But during this time, I have thought many days, almost every day, about the Holocaust. And okay, we're going through a hard time, but how did they go through what they went through, the ones who survived? And
Right.
I think about Anne Frank, who couldn't move in that attic. And as hard as it is what we're going through, we have Amazon, we have Netflix, we have groceries delivered, we have television, we have, okay, so, we're going to get through it. We really are. And
You're very right. I mean, it's all in your perspective. It's all in your perspective. And like as we started off saying, with our conversation in the first place, there have been COVID has presented challenges, but it's presented opportunities. So the opportunity to meet with people like you and filmmakers from around the world um, and authors, who we would never have been able to financially bring, to Chicago. Um, so, you have to look at life with a full perspective. You really have to like take everything into consideration before you start complaining.
yeah, I mean, we as Americans, we're pretty spoiled. No,
For
we
sure,
we
for
are.
sure.
We've had it good for a long time, and we didn't have a world war that destroyed. I mean, we had 9/11, but we didn't have wars that destroyed the entire country, like Poland, like Germany, like many places.
It's very
So yeah, yeah. So I don't get to see the people who are on here. It's not right. It's a webinar. It's not a Zoom. So
yeah.
hi, wherever you are. Hi, and thanks for being here.
And that's one of the challenges, right? So
Yeah,
that's, but I hope that we will be able to, like I said, show the film to younger students, moving forward. And perhaps you'll join us again in Chicago. I sure hope so.
I sure hope so. I hope it'll be in person, and I hope it'll be in a theater filled with young people and old people and middle-aged people. But I hope that we can all be together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, Lynn.
My pleasure.
And thank you everybody for joining us, and please continue to join us for more films and more filmmaker discussions. And everybody be safe, be well, and have a great night. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.